Hello, everybody. My name is Dratnos, and today we are going to be talking about the Race to World First Day Zero prediction show. As we've seen Heroic Week come to an end, we have a lot of information as to what's going to be happening in the Race to World First, and we kind of want to do a recap every single day.
Yeah, I realize now I don't really need my headset on for this because, you're here in person.
Sorry if there's any background noise, by the way. Also, we have potentially a second microphone if this one sounds bad.
Yeah, let us know about the audio quality. Good night, Jack. Yeah, we got our other liquid casters here in the room, so...
Hope it doesn't sound like shit. The video quality, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
It's not getting any better.
It's not getting any. In fact, it's likely getting much worse. So yeah, this is going to be... We're going to do videos again every day here on my YouTube channel, and then we'll link them on Wowhead and stuff about the Race to World First, what's been going on. We'll be recording them after Liquid's days are done, so it'll probably be like 1 or 2 a.m. local time.
It's like right as
West Coast.
Right as Echo's starting.
Yeah, right as Echo's starting, so our day one recap will come up as Echo's day one. Has been going actually for a little while because they can start at 5 a.m. So,
oh, sure. Okay, yeah, that's good.
But yeah, okay, so that's the plan, I guess, logistically for what's happening here. And we wanted to make a video first, just after Heroic Week, where we talk about what's been going on in Heroic Week and what we think is going to happen on Mythic Week. So that's the predictions that we're starting with, which I guess there's a few different kind of predictions to make. Pull counts are kind of an obvious one, or like what bosses are going to be hard.
Yeah.
I feel like going into this tier, kind of the common consensus is Silken Court looks... A lot of people are thinking it's going to be harder than Queen Ansarek. I think Queen Ansarek actually has a lot of potential to be extremely difficult as well.
I would say that the difference is like Silken Court's like a pull count accruer. Queen Ansarek can as well, because like phase 1 of Queen Ansarek is the most difficult part of that phase. But I feel like Silken Court, I mean, you can just get so many wipes to that boss like really early on, and people normally look at like wipes as the big metric for how difficult a fight was, not necessarily like relative difficulty. The thing with like Silken Court is just like it's so fast. It was so fast during testing, but I think that both of these fights look like they can be very difficult. I think that in general, though, it kind of looks like a 2-boss tier. I kind of expect...
Yeah, there's some suspicion that maybe Nexus Princess is also going to be quite difficult, but...
I think that guilds are just like so good at patchwork fights these days. It's like, unless it is almost mathematically impossible or whatever, it's really hard to throw a really well-tuned patchwork fight at Race World First level guilds and not have to nerf it then.
Yeah, I would be surprised if we get into triple-digit pull counts for any of the bosses that aren't the last two, but if it was, it would probably be Nexus Princess and then maybe Brood Twister. Brood Twister, a lot of people think is going to be 20, 30 pulls, but it could definitely go higher.
Yeah. Other predictions. I think that this tier is going to be like really heavy melee.
Yeah, it's not so much that the mechanics seem especially melee-friendly.
Melee just do the most damage.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of melee specs look good, right? Like Fury Warrior, Enhancement Shaman, both extremely strong, both potentially stackable.
Ret Paladin looks okay. Like you can bring one, you can bring like one Frosty K.
Frosty K looking good.
Rogue obviously is great.
Need one.
Could potentially bring a Feral for Mark of the Wild.
Yeah, so that's kind of the raid buff situation. The biggest question marks is what monk are you bringing and what druid are you bringing?
It could just be double tank.
You can take them both as your tanks, or you could, if you want to play a Blood DK, or 2 Blood DKs, then you'd have to swap in. I think Windwalker and Feral are the best ways.
Fine, yeah.
But I do think taking both as your tanks and then bringing up more DPS slots for damage dealers or for like the highest damage dealers is probably my favorite looking way to do that right now.
I think that we're going to see more melee than normal. I'm kind of expecting to maybe even see
10,
8, 10, 12 maybe.
Counting the tanks and melee healers.
Counting the tank and the H-Pally.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird situation, which we don't normally see that many melee, but I think the melee just do the most damage. And so then it's like, the only range that seems even semi-stackable is mage.
Right, yeah, the other, like, it to me, it seems unlikely that you'd be, like, it seems like you're kind of reluctantly bringing one hunter for Hunter's Mark, reluctantly bringing a warlock for warlock utility, and then beyond that, it's just mages.
Yeah.
Maybe Devovoker, Sleeper, potentially.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of that spec. That spec got buffed twice in the last 3 weeks, and a huge bug fix in its favor as well. So, see.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room: bans. So, some teams received bans and rollbacks for Renown exploiting of the Silken Threads. Basically, some teams had, or some members of every single team, it seems like at this point, had people get 4-day banned, which impacted their Heroic Week a little bit. I'm going to say that it doesn't end up affecting anything long-term with the race rule first. It seems like everybody's splits got done. Everybody did the 16 splits that they were prepping. Jinji might have had to pull a 24-hour stream.
Yeah.
In general, this isn't really going to affect anything, though, long-term.
I would say that, messing with sleep a little bit is probably an underratedly important thing.
Okay.
Like, sleep is really, really OP.
Okay, in-game it's not going to affect anything.
Yeah, I suspect that there's not a difference in item level at the end of the week, really, between... So Liquid was very barely impacted. It was Trill and Maybe that got banned for Liquid.
But maybe he's like the Ogficer this tier.
Yeah, so when you only have 2 people impacted, it doesn't really impact you very much because you just do their splits at the end of the week with their mains, and you just have an extra helper in the other splits, and it doesn't really change anything. Echo had more, and Method had way more, to the extent that it's like splits didn't start for Method until their unbans came in. So that's more impactful. Like, you lose more time, and I don't know. I mean, I think it is mostly sleep.
The bans are warranted. Like I think that you and I are probably pretty much in agreement. They needed to do something. I think that with the scope of the bans that they went with is probably the correct amount, because it's not going to really impact anything long term, but it's more like a warning shot of like, you gotta stop, like you cannot be exploiting stuff.
Yeah, I didn't like the bans so there were a couple different ways that you could get extra severed threads rep, and some was some pretty normal play patterns that it just
belong it to multiple characters.
If you were multi-boxing. Now, I'm personally not a fan of multi-boxing. I wish they would make it not allowed, but given that it is allowed, and if you were just normally multi-box leveling, it was pretty easy to accidentally get some extra rep.
Yes.
So I don't like banning those players, but I do like, in general, not allowing the exploit and making a new rule of the road. I would also be in favor of banning multi-boxing, but that's a different issue. That's a war that's not currently being fought. But I think the Heroic Week ban's like a pretty fair way to signal that this isn't allowed, and there's a new sheriff in town without actually griefing the race. I don't think the race is going to be substantially impacted beyond like sleep quality is going to be a little bit worse for Method to a greater extent, Echo to a lesser extent.
I mean, in general, maybe should cover this in our predictions. I think that Liquid and Echo have almost 100% of the share of the opportunity to win the race rule first, and I'm going to give China and Method 0%.
Okay, yeah, I feel like Method... If somebody offered me, any bet with more than 1% on Method, I'd be happy to take against it, right? Like I think they're somewhere around 1%.
I mean, a method success, in my opinion, is like somehow they sneak world second somehow. I
mean, the path to Method's world second is very easy. It's Echo or Liquid get world first by far enough that the other team is demoralized enough to like AFK for 5 days. That happened in Sepulchre.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main way.
The Chinese guilds, I feel like the Chinese guilds, like in terms of like world quality, kind of peaked about BFA-ish and have kind of been on the downswing a little bit. The Chinese servers did open up recently again. They've also offered up $100,000
roughly,
ish bounty for being able to get world first. That ramps up over time, but I don't think that the Chinese teams are of the caliber of players that you need to be able to win the race world first right now. Now, it is maybe possible in the future. We see them do great things in the MDI and the TGP. So they have people who are qualified. Not yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that whatever tier it happens, we won't know about it either until it does happen, right? Like
they also start 72 hours after.
Not 72, right? It's like 36 or something.
36. Yeah, 36. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a day and a half, I think, because it's their Thursday, which is half the.
Right.
Also
12 hours. Yeah.
So 36-ish hours slower to start. I don't know. I mean, it's a region that we often don't have a good finger on the pulse of exactly how good the Chinese guilds are each tier as well, right? Like is it a world 4th tier? Is it a world 10th tier, right? We don't know until we go
in. A little bit of research. I mean, it seems like the top ranking seems like Skyline is dead and they rebuilt with like half of the members of Skyline. Okay. So like
my guess is that that's probably short-term bad, but maybe long-term good. That guild felt like they'd reached their ceiling, so maybe reconfiguring it was going to be good.
The Chinese guilds had like pretty big sponsors that they no longer have too. I don't know.
Yeah, and that there is a cash prize again that NetEase is offering to any Chinese guild that gets world first, but and it does grow every tier that it doesn't get claimed, but I don't think it's at enough money to actually incentivize the kind of stuff that would be needed to get world first already until it gets to like millions of dollars. Probably.
You would maybe have to, like, even if you merged all of the best Chinese guilds, I don't know if you're winning against.
I mean, there's a lot of raw talent there for sure, right? Like you see a lot of these players in TGP and MDI doing really well, but Yeah, I mean, the pieces have been there before, but especially when you factor in that 36-hour delay, the lack of kind of experience of creating the strats from a position of being ahead, which is something that only the Liquid and Echo really have any experience doing.
Oh, dude, imagine
And
they
a
played
couple of
on
Mythic players. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I
Oh
think
wait, they can't claim the bounty.
I guess that would mean.
Hold on, wait, are we just went in a complete circle real quick?
Yeah, it doesn't work. Hang on. Yeah, so I think it's probably I would suspect that if you're giving Method more than like a 1% chance, that's probably also
You're being
you probably are. I wouldn't say dishonest, but you're more optimistic about them than we are. There's this kind of narrative every tier that's like they're getting closer and closer. Then we actually look at the last 3 tiers. It's like they kind of were the same away.
The problem is
They're
like
closer in Avarice than in Miragecil.
the problem is Echo has the best players in the region, and if you really want to compete for Race to World first, it is like, and you're from the European region, they are 100% the choice if you have the opportunity between the 2 guilds, right? Say you're of that player caliber that they think that you're a Race to World first competitor, you would, if in theory, you would just never go to Method because Echo is having all the success recently.
Any player that is given an offer by both orgs is going to choose Echo because
if their aspirations are truly to win the Race to World first.
Which, again, except I guess Sko, whose aspiration is to win it leading Method, right? But I guess he would never get it.
Sko's not playing.
Exactly, yeah, that's true. But, if you got an offer to, I don't know, run Echo or something.
Okay, sure.
I'm not sure exactly what that would even look like, but
yeah.
Completely irrelevant hypothetical aside. Of the 99 or 100% that you and I both agree then gets split between Liquid and Echo, how would you split that up?
50-50? Probably still about the same. I feel like giving anybody like a real edge. Like I feel like the guilds outplay one another each and every single tier, but like going into the tier, I feel like giving either guild like a significant statistical edge is, I feel like maybe just a bit out of touch with like how close these 2 guilds are with one another. Because even if you ship like one of these guilds back, like a full tier or like a full expansion, right? Like you sent this guild right now back to Vault of the Incarnates, I think that they're probably winning, right?
Yeah, I will say there are some cases you could make for either guild being more than 50-50. So I can lay out some of those arguments. So here's the argument for Liquid being the favorite. They lost Razagath due to the boss got nerfed and then immediately killed the pull afterwards.
I mean, they were behind on Raz.
They were behind.
Yes,
they were certainly behind. But it was kind of a case of like you're in a football game. It's in overtime. One team has the ball and the refs just blow the whistle and are like, okay, the team with the ball wins, right? Like that was sort of what happened with Razagath.
There was no rebuttal. But the issue was
exactly. Yes. So again, I'm laying out the argument here. Then the other side of this argument as well is that
they maybe should have won a Miragecil.
Yeah, Liquid looked really good in Avarice. They won that tier. In a Miragecil, there was the Sneak.Lua incident on Fire that's just come out recently where Echo had a weak aura that bypassed the private aura nature of the first intermission, which cost every other guild that's ever done that boss until that got changed to not be private aura dozens of pulls on at the least. So had that not existed, which whether or not that's TOS is debatable.
It's definitely TOS. The question is like, should there have been a punishment for it?
Yeah, certainly. I think they certainly were smart to be able to get away with it and to hide it as they did.
What I'm going to say as a third party here, I think that either guild, if they would have known about it, would have probably have exploited it. I think that it's not something that should be allowed, though. I think that you and I are probably in agreement that should not be allowed under any circumstances.
Honestly, I think it's a good argument for why private auras are.
Private auras are trolls.
There's like 30 different ways. There's 30 different like exploits around them that people find every tier.
They're so bad.
It's some stupid macro and map. But anyways, that aside. So that's the case for like, okay, Liquid are actually really strong.
55? 45, is that where we're at here?
On the other hand, Echo have won 5 of the last 8, and then if you go back before that, it's at the time obviously they were Method at the time, but most of that roster was had evolved into being Echo.
They only lost 1,
and they won then going back all the way through. So there were the 2 tiers in a row that Liquid won, and then aside from that there was Sarkarath, and other than that it's been Echo all the way for the longest time. Does that sound like a 50-50 matchup? I don't know. See, that's the argument for Echo on this.
I think
Liquid has lost more players this tier than they've gained as well.
That's true. I think in general it's still about 50-50 in my mind.
I think so as well, yeah.
It's more just like, even if you are giving like a statistical edge to one team or the other, it's like 55-45. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Like, it's just like kind of how I'm viewing it is like, I think that legitimately either team could win about if you simulated it multiple times, I think there's a lot of different paths to victories for both of these teams. And you outlined 2 paths to victory for Liquid on both Razageth and on Fyrakk. So it's like there were paths to victory. It's not
Echo was very close on Sarkareth as well.
If teams were getting like completely blown out of the water, if you say every tier was like a jailer tier, I would maybe be a bit more concerned and start like giving an edge to somebody else. Not every tier is like that. You know, sometimes one of the teams just like cooks super hard that entire tier. So, dude, Liquid was ahead going like coming out of Tendril. Liquid was way ahead and they fumbled it.
They weren't way ahead. They were ahead.
Well, they were 18 hours ahead.
Yeah.
And so
they start 13 hours ahead. So,
but you see, they
made up a little bit of time, but that's not way ahead.
But Echo has to overcome the 13 hours as well. So it's anyway.
I mean, certainly the gap needs. If you're an Echo fan, you want that gap to be shrinking, not growing. And the tiers that it's grown, like
I've never seen them be able to win.
Yeah, that was the first time that had happened. Really, was Amir Jasil, which Fyrakk.
Yeah, so Heroic Week came back. Basically, all the guilds are very geared. Pretty much everybody's like 616 item level. Full Heroic Bis. I kind of expect the next steps for the guild for like the next, I would say, 24 to 48 hours after Heroic Week starts is crafting.
Zyra just looked at me and did shake his head no when you said everybody's full Bis. There are 2 people that are that Bis. He says THD and Dryny, right?
Okay, so most people are close to.
People have good gear, and they don't win gears without Heroic Week. Is the thing. Everybody has that 4-set.
Everybody has a 4-set. The only real gear that they can now get from another like full set of heroic splits is like very minimal gains. The biggest thing, like I was saying, is going to be crafting gear from. Being able to go and get a Alondra Crest from Mythic Plus. So I kind of expect like, looking to craft, probably killing the first 4 bosses of Mythic, which should in theory be one-shots.
Yeah.
And then like...
The question is, how much time is going to be spent this coming week in splits? And when does that happen in heroic splits? Because there are benefits to be gained in heroic splits. There are a lot of good very rare items that can go on anybody. So in theory, if you have 18 people, each of whom have only one very rare item, it would make sense to do 18 different splits where you're rolling as many dice as you can to try and get more very rare items across your raid.
Do you need to do helper splits anymore though?
You could. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, but it would be faster to do it that way. And then you'd have more mains per hour getting their die rolls. So, and helper splits would be easier because we've got more gear. So it's a question of, is that worth the time? Or is it not? And
I mean, we're coming into the raid more geared than ever. I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if this raid's gonna melt because of this gear.
It might, especially, dude. Those very rare items are super good. They're actually so good. They go on anybody. They give your healers a bunch of extra mana. They give your raid a bunch of avoidance and healing received. Like if you have versus don't have that on your whole raid, it's like night and day how much more survivable you are in a hard fight. So my guess is they're gonna want to not pull the trigger on heroic splits on Tuesday because they're gonna want to see like, is this a tier we can do by Friday of week 1? Like, is it like we don't want to be doing heroic splits if this is a tier that can be done in 4 days, which it feasibly maybe could be depending on the tuning. But then if it's super hard, then you want to get full value out of splits to get as many of those very rare items as you possibly can across your 18 people. And if it's somewhere in the middle, then you want to run maybe 9 splits instead of 18 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, but in general, we're going to see a lot less heroic splits. I'm kind of only expecting like 1 day.
I suspect that there will be more splits than we would like happening because I do think those very rare items are worth getting as many dice rolls on as possible.
Maybe I'm just coping so hard.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I think that what will happen is the splits will be later in the week, but I do think they will still happen. Yeah, I think we're gonna be in for a rude awakening where
we're just talking about gear tomorrow. Pog.
I think tomorrow Mythic bosses will happen, but I think Wednesday heroic splits will happen, and maybe Thursday or something.
It's okay.
Yeah.
How long do you think this raid's gonna be?
I think that it's a week 1 tier.
I was thinking a 6-day tier as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I think something I've got a sense like there's not very many hard bosses it looks like this tier. Even if Silken Court is tough, even if Queen Ansarek is tough, if they can get those splits done in 2 days, that's 4 days with full gear to work on things.
Does Blizzard ever tune the raid around the Severed Threads buff?
The stacking buff that comes out in a month? Yeah, maybe that's an argument. It's like they made the raid harder because they know that normies are gonna, like, such as us, normies in the sense of like any Mythic raider obviously is nowhere near a normie, but regular cutting edge guilds will be able to have a 20% health and damage buff that they can look at. So maybe that's an argument for Blizzard is free to tune the raid to be harder than usual. But I don't know. I just feel like a full roster of very rares on everybody that splits kind of lets you get is so much extra power that will not be accounted for, and so I think it's going to melt week 1.
Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts.
Ooh, I'm going to give a bold prediction.
Okay.
I don't think that Echo and Liquid are going to run the same tank comp.
Okay. Yeah, I suspect there will be differences there as well, just from but I got a sense for it too.
I also think that there's going to be 3 warriors played by one guild.
And 2 by the other?
I don't know. They might both play 3.
Okay. My hot take is, let's see.
12 melee Ansarek.
I bet there will be a duplicate healer. I bet there will not be a rainbow comp in healers. I bet at least one guild will play 2 of the same healer.
It would have to be Disc, right?
I'm not making my prediction less wide by specifying what healer.
Okay. Anyways, all right. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about what we saw, probably from Liquid's day 1. Echo's going to probably have started about, 5 hours?
Yeah, so they start at 5 a.m. local time for them, which is 8 p.m. our time. So we'll probably be recording 5 hours into their day.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like that. So we'll at least have
a little info, but I suspect it'll just be like, oh, they went to start doing M+.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Watch the Team Liquid broadcast for us commentating.
Yep.
Watch the Echo broadcast if you want other Race World First coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.